All right, hey everybody, welcome back. This is Burning Man. This is crazy, and we can't do it in person, so we're gonna do it live. We just heard an amazing discussion about artificial intelligence and the oceans. And as you can see, I've still got VR hair. That's what happens when you wear these crazy headsets. It messes up your hair. I probably won't have to worry about that for too much longer because it's going to be leaving me, but that's okay. That's what happens every now and then. Our next guests are just amazing, amazing human beings, and I've had a wonderful privilege of being able to kind of meet them over the last few weeks, if not months. In this particular talk, we're going to be talking about the topic of munitions and the ocean. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy to talk about. Why do we, at a very peace-loving event, talk about things that could hurt people and blow things up? Well, that's the very reason why we're going to talk about it, because oftentimes we think about these things exploding, being dropped, and destroying things, but we don't often talk about the health detriments. So here with me, I brought some experts. Let's bring them on now. I've got Jim Porter and Terence Long. This is Jim Porter here. Terence Long, and let me see if I can get my ugly mug in here. Amazing. So here we got the three of us on. Guys, how are you? First of all, where are you?
Go ahead, Terry.
I'm in St. Anne's Bay in Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia.
Awesome. And I'm in Athens, Georgia.
Awesome. And so, guys, first of all, let's give me a little bit of background on some of the stuff that you're doing. Terence, maybe could you tell us a little bit about, first of all, I guess we're going to have to go way back and get real simple here. First of all, how did you even get into this business of unexploded ordinances underwater?
Basically, my background is I'm a retired military engineer, and I specialized in explosive ordnance disposal in the military. And then after the military, I was with the United Nations as a commissioned officer, where I looked at landmines and different types of things like that. Back around 2000, I started to get interested in the underwater munitions because I started to hear about impact on fish and stuff like that. So after I learned a bit more from my background and going through historical documents, I had a Senate hearing. And from that Senate hearing, we basically had a unanimous decision from the Canadian government saying that they needed to look at underwater munitions and have a United Nations conference. That never happened, so I founded the International Dialogues on Underwater Munitions. And from that day forward, we started looking at the situation, trying to address it on a global scale.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, again, I'm Jim Porter, and I'm a coral reef ecologist. I had no expertise in munitions at all, but then I was invited to do a survey of coral reefs in Vieques, Puerto Rico. And we wound up counting, instead of corals, counting bombs.
Wow. Amazing. And so, guys, maybe you could give us, and you guys feel free to jump in at any particular time, but maybe can you give us kind of some background on why are there even munitions in the ocean to begin with?
Basically, the munitions are being disposed of or started to be disposed of in the ocean after they become time expired, or people no want to longer use them or obsolete. They would basically be loaded up into the ships up until the 1970s and dumped into the ocean as a means of disposal.
Yeah, at the end of World War II, all the coastal commanders were given the order, get rid of your field of steel. And that's how they did it.
Amazing. And, I think what's crazy about it all is when we think about disposing of something, oftentimes we look at, the ocean and say, well, we'll just put it there, because the ocean's infinite and we can do that. Obviously we know that with plastic, right? I mean, if anybody who's watching this now knows how finite the ocean is, we often use this phrase that 71% of the surface of the ocean is water, right? We always talk about the surface. We don't talk about volume. If we were to talk about the volume of Earth plus the volume of liquid, it would be like a tennis ball and an eraser as a comparison, right? So we have to protect this very finite amount of resource that we have on this planet. And so can you guys maybe explain a little bit on what happens from what they call conventional munitions, as far as I've been educated by the both of you? What happens, I guess, to the human body when it's exposed to some of these things? And you feel free to jump in anywhere, either one of you.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, well, these munitions aren't just explosive; they have really toxic compounds in them. So on Vieques, for instance, on a small island off Puerto Rico, we measured 7 carcinogens leaching out of these unexploded ordinances. Some of them in concentrations that were 100,000 times above EPA's allowable level. This stuff's really toxic.
Yeah. No, it's really amazing, and what was the total? I remember you guys were telling me recently when we were talking that there was an estimated amount of munitions that are in the water. What was that number? I don't want to get
basically around the world, we can easily commit to hundreds of millions of tons and even into the billion. And the thing that's most alarming is a lot of countries still haven't released where they've dumped all their munitions since back in 1910.
Yeah, we have evidence that suggests that there are at least 10,000 dump sites for munitions off the coast in lakes and rivers and oceans. Of those 10,000, the estimate is something like 25% are in less than 100 feet of water, and 10% of those may be in less than 50 feet of water.
Wow. So, recently there was a discussion that was happening in Hawaii that really brought my attention to things, and it was that there was these 2 unexploded ordinances, but they're everywhere. I mean, it's not related to just Hawaii. It's everywhere on the planet. And their solution to this was to just, let's blow it up because then it won't be a harm to humans. What do you guys look at as a potential solution for some of this stuff? Because as just a citizen, I feel kind of helpless, to be honest with you.
Well, we have to look at non-destructive disposal. We don't need to be blowing this stuff up. When we blow it up, we put more explosives on top of it, and we just create an impact on the environment with all these toxins. It's just a non-starter. Governments have not invested in these disposal technologies. They're shying away from cleaning up, and they need to look at the problem and address it.
Yeah, that's right. Right now it's point source pollution. It's right there at the explosive device, the bomb, the bullet, whatever. But if you blow it up, it becomes a migratory waste stream. It just goes everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I just noticed that Christine joined us as well. Hey, Christine, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm glad to join this call.
Well, I think it's really important. We've been talking about kind of this problem of having munitions in the water, but there's also a bit of a problem knowing where they're at. And I know that you've kind of been working on ways to kind of identify locations of things. Can you maybe talk about maybe some of the stuff that you're working on and kind of how you help to kind of see how we can maybe make heads or tails of this problem?
Yeah, so I worked with Jim back in, I think it was the early 2000s, and it was really the first time I ever heard about this issue. And Jim raised it to me, and I honestly, after 15 years in the field, it's never been brought to my attention again. And then now I'm on the call with you guys, and Jim's there again, still talking about it. And it's amazing to me just how under the radar it's been. So for me, I'm specialized in crowdsourcing data and participatory science. And so we've built an app for crowdsourcing data on many wildlife species, but also on anthropogenic issues. So I think that we could potentially figure out through crowdsourcing where people see them, what the interaction is with different people and known sites to see how many people are coming in close contact with them, what the state of the munitions look like, and really take a research and research approach to munitions in the ocean ecosystem. And then also to spread awareness to see, who's seeing them and how close of a contact they're coming to them. Yeah. That's what I think.
No, that's awesome, and I think that's something that's definitely needed, because I think right now it's like you don't know what you don't know, and this stuff is just everywhere. And Terence, you were even telling me that a lot of kind of like the reporting of where these things are is sometimes suppressed because it's hearsay. How out of where we think that this stuff is, like how much of it is accurate?
Well, it depends which country you're talking about. A lot of different countries look at it different ways. Some countries, for an example, the report starts out thousands of pages, and as they go through it, people start to say, well, that's anecdotal information, and they start removing it out of the report. And the next thing you know, your report is 20 pages. And what really happened is those other sites were really not investigated properly by independent people to see if it actually is a concern or there's munitions there. But what we're finding is the munitions are everywhere. It doesn't matter what country you go to, what sea you go to. All the problems they're having in the United States with the chemical and conventional munitions impacting on fish stocks and sea life. The same thing's happening in Canada. And like Jim talked about 10,000 sites. Just off of Nova Scotia here, we have 3,000 sites. One site where we get our fish from, 4VN, has 80,000 tons of TNT. So it should be a concern to everybody around the globe who consume fish.
Yeah, I think that's true. I want to pick up on Christine's point about crowdsourcing, because the Navy told us they didn't know where the munitions were in the areas, coral reef areas we were supposed to survey. But we just asked the locals, and they said, yeah, we'll take you to every one.
Yeah, of course.
We know where most of these sites are, but there's no government willingness to clean it up. We have to look at international treaties and convention, and it takes us back to the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Now, I'm supposed to be attending that event in November, and I want to talk about underwater munitions. But you can see where the opposition leader was just poisoned in Russia with nunchuck chemicals. So when I go to the Chemical Weapons Convention in The Hague in November, they will not be able to talk about anything but that poisoning. And this is what happens every time we go to The Hague, to the Chemical Weapons Convention. They have two caveats that basically say all the chemical weapons that were dumped before 1985 are not there. That's all the chemical weapons. And all the conventional weapons are not there as well. So these countries, our countries that we represent, that we're part of, has signed away our right to protect the ocean. So we must look at this at not only finding out where the sites are and cleaning them up, but we must address this on a political level. We must make the politicians give them that willingness to clean these sites up.
That's a good point. Let me tell you, the general viewing audience. So there's four types of weapons generally, and they're all found in the oceans. So they're conventional munitions, that's like TNT, chemical weapons we just talked about, biological weapons, and radiological. And all of those are dumped in the ocean.
That blows my mind, because it's like you think about this is the life support system on planet Earth, and you know, I feel like, you know, I've been around the ocean for a very long time. You know, I started out really angry about plastic pollution, and then I got really angry that we were losing our coral reefs due to acidification and climate change. And it's just like, it just seems like the more that I learn, the more angry I get. But, you know, and I guess it's, you know, there's one side of that where I think about like Darth Vader, and he's like, welcome to the dark side. And it's like, you know, as you feel the darkness, and it's like, I feel like that sometimes is the motivator, and it definitely is for me. But I guess, you know, for a lot of people who are watching this, you know, they don't even realize probably that the water that they swim in when they go on vacation to these beautiful places is filled with these contaminants. I mean, what do they need to know as individuals enjoying the ocean, what this could potentially do to their bodies?
Well, let me give you some data from Vieques in Puerto Rico. So if you look at the long-term residents, they die at a rate that's 30% higher as a result of cancer. They die at a rate of 45% higher than the mainland of Puerto Rico, which was the control, of diabetes, 95% higher death rates of cirrhosis of the liver, and 381% higher death rates from hypertension, heart disease. And that's in the long-term residents, and they've been exposed to this military debris in the ocean, in the air, and on land, and it's a serious toxic material.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's one thing to blow something up and you know, to be upset about the coral reef, and then also to know But there also is some things that I had some conversations with some people kind of outside of our circle. You guys are the experts, and I always look to you as what is the truth and what is not. But there have been some people saying, yeah, but you know what? These old munitions have been there for so long. They should just stay there. And you know what? Coral reefs are actually growing on them. They're thriving on them. What do you guys say to that?
Basically, when you look at the half-life of the TNTs from the conventional munitions, it's 5,000 years. So do you want that munition to sit there and pollute for 5,000 years where it's a point source emitter? Or would you rather just pick it up and take it out of the water? You need to remember that about 80% of the munitions dumped in the water don't have a fuse on it. So it's not a danger. You can actually pick it up and take it out of the water and properly dispose of it.
Yeah, we found this carcinogenic material, this toxic material. That doesn't include the lead or the arsenic that's also in the munitions. Just the toxic material. We found it in the water around the bombs. We found it in the sand on the seafloor. We found it in feather duster worms, sea urchins, and fish. It goes everywhere in the ecosystem. So this idea of just leave it alone, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we hear about plastic and bioaccumulation. It's like, if we see plastic in the ocean, that's one thing. But then we learn that nano and microplastic ends up being eaten by smaller animals, and then those bigger animals eat those, and then they end up in our bloodstream, which is crazy. So there's not only bioaccumulation from plastic standpoint, and I'm probably pumping not blood in my veins, but probably BPA. But I probably also have TNT in there too, which, my mom always said I had an explosive personality, but I guess I probably really do at this point. I mean, how much of our seafood do you think that we're buying at, the grocery store is contaminated with this stuff? I mean, is it something that we should be worried about?
If I could give you an example, in the European Union, we found that in the Baltic Sea that every fish tested for warfare agent, that 30% of the fish contained it. Now, what you got to realize, these munitions are still degrading and on the bottom of the ocean. So the 30% of the contaminated fish has nowhere to go but up.
It's amazing. It's funny. I used a Darth Vader reference earlier, but I'm looking at your video right now, Terence, and I'm loving it because you kind of look like the Emperor. So, but for those who are watching, you're the good Emperor. It's a good guy. Christine, I want to get back to you on some of your data collection. Let's start talking about a little bit about okay, so we know that there's a problem. There's munitions in the water. It's like a light going off that this is a health risk at the moment. Could you talk a little bit about how scientists gather data now, what that process looks like, and maybe what you hope to, with some of your ideas, to accomplish and to accelerate the identification of some of these things?
Yeah, right.
Sorry. No, go ahead. I'll speak about Europe on the data when you're done. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So typically scientists go out and we sample a very small piece of the world's ocean for a very short period of time. Like Jim said, you go out to look for something specific and then you find some other things. And usually just the experts are, searching this small piece of the ocean. And we tend to only go out when it's nice weather or in the summer months when we're not teaching or whatever it is. And so, but people that live in the ocean and work on the ocean and are recreationally using the ocean, they see various things every single day. And so I always say, if you're on the beach and you look around and you don't see a marine scientist, that means they're not capturing what you're seeing. And the ocean is highly dynamic and highly variable. And so getting a picture of the ocean and how it changes through time, especially on the ecological, the social, how we use the ocean, as well as the anthropogenic, it changes. The number of times that I've been on a dock that someone says, hey, scientists aren't looking into this because they don't even know it exists. They don't know it's a problem. The number of people that have to bring something to the awareness of a scientist before it gets their attention is a lot of people before it captures our attention, for us to be like, oh, well, maybe we can apply for funding and get into that. And so I think of crowdsourcing data. So I'm the founder of eOceans, and we have an app where we collect data. So it's an activity tracker, and you track your activity and you report what you see. And so that way we have a vision of collecting 1 billion observations a day. so that we can use it as an early warning system for range extending species, climate change, all these things and then also munitions. So what's the impact of these and how many people are potentially being impacted? And if you put that in a meta-analytical framework with stuff like Jim and Terence's research, then we can start to pick apart those pieces of the puzzle and put them together to see what the actual risk is.
It's kind of like Waze for the ocean.
It is, yes.
Yeah, it's just kind of cool because, like, I'll be honest, like, the first reason why I had downloaded Waze was because when I went to go see my parents, like, I wanted to know where the cops were so I wouldn't get a ticket. But in this scenario, it's great because, we know where the munitions potentially could be, because if I free dive down to a space and see this, metal-looking object, it could be a cool thing to kind of just keep track of it. Is there, how do you, obviously with apps, it's like, it's cool to download. Like, I downloaded the Global Fishing Watch app, and it's like I watch it for a little bit and then I get tired of it and I don't open it again. Is there a way to kind of incentivize, the crowdfunding side of this so that people continually contribute to this data set?
Yeah, so not crowdfunding, but crowdsourcing. So this is where I've really specialized since 2004, really, on not only understanding the data and how it can be used for science and policy, but also talking to thousands of people and understanding what it is that the problem is that they have. Like, a lot of scientists make apps or make research projects that are designed for them, but not for the user. So and it's a black box. We call a phone hotline and we put down some records and we put it into a black box. We never see. So that's where, putting it in so that it's transparent. So whenever a scientist uses your data, you get to see it. You get to see the results happen in real time. And it can be in your community. It can be in a global project. So that's really where I think that that has had to change for many years. And now we have the technology to do it. And we also have the technology to analyze such big data in real time to be able to understand things before even we notice that they're changing.
Yeah, no, that's super cool, because I think, like, that's the biggest thing. It's like, we what is it? Was it Lord Kelvin, I think, said, is that we can only improve something that's been measured. I completely butchered that line, by the way, but it's essentially the thing is that if we haven't measured something and we don't even know what exists, then how can we do anything about it? So I think this is really great because, Terence, to your point, if a bunch of guys say, hey, there's munitions down here, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes up the chain of command, and then they just basically say, well, we're only going to report 1% of this because, well, the other 99% is just a bunch of fishermen or some guys that are free diving or doing something. I think this is a really great tool, and I'm always looking for ways to contribute. The other thing I'd kind of like to shift the conversation for just a half second, because just the other day, Hank Rogers and I were talking about deep sea mining, and then moratoriums that we're hopefully going to impose on deep sea mining. But Terence, you and I had a conversation about the materials that are inside these munitions. I mean, there is metals down there. Like, if we're going to be mining anything, why can't we mine munitions? Is that a thing? Can we do that?
Well, in some cases you can. In Canada, we've actually taken shipwrecks, cut the sides of them open, taken the munitions out, overpacked them, and then taken them off for proper disposal. And then the shipwreck is cut up for scrap. That can be done anywhere. It all gets down to using, your mind and taking the best approaches to cleaning something up. But it's something that should be done by experts. It's something that people shouldn't just go out and do, but it's actually a value to look at.
Yeah, and I just was thinking in my head, it's like, what does that closed loop situation look like? Because we as humans, plastic is a good example of this, right? It's like, we need to have something that's lighter, it's durable, that we can put our goods into, and then we can sell it out to masses. But we never designed the end of life, what's going to happen when we're done with it. And so, I'm always thinking about those no closed soups, just closed circle. I don't know. I should just stop. I'm in the wrong business here. I should stop talking. But
well, I wanted to let your audience know about your earlier Darth Vader connections between things, because people probably don't realize that 6% of all material manufactured or consumed globally is for either war or the conduct of war. That means that 6 to 10% of all climate change, sea level rise, global warming, coral reef death is due to the human capacity to blow things up. And we've got to turn that around and make us a green planet and really get on these technologies and get rid of this toxic material.
Yeah. No, we really got to do it. So let's talk about solutions, guys. Let's, excuse me. This is, pronouns have got to go away. Let you guys, how would you say you guys? Is that new? No, you guys, nothing.
That's
We'll
okay.
just say, yes,
Guys,
okay.
girls.
Whatever. Ladies, guys. I'm turning red now because I can't get that out of my vocabulary. Any case, I was already red before it ever happened. But I am literally the redheaded stepchild. Let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about how we can remove these things. Now, Terence, you talked about they need to leave the ocean. Can they be neutralized? And when you do neutralize them and take them out, where do they go from there? Do they just go to the landfill?
Yeah. What we did is we had a summer school, a NATO Science for Peace and Security. And one of the things we did is we x-rayed the munitions, and we found out that the bodies of the munitions had a mineral of 155 parts per million lead. So the theory with the chemical that are in them, the best thing to do is to take them out of the water and properly dispose of them. There are chambers and different type of non-disposal technologies such as water jet and chemical agents that you can inject into the munitions to neutralize it. So all that stuff exists. What we have, it goes back to there's no funding available for organizations like the International Dialogue on Underwater Munitions to clean it up. And there's no political will because, again, the OPCW says leave them in the water. And the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are designed like SDG 14, life below water, they say pull them up out of the water. So what is it? Pull them up out of the water or leave them there?
Yeah. Well, that's obviously pull them out of the water. I mean, that's the solution.
There are a lot of green technologies to get rid of the chemicals and get rid of the metals. I mean, it's not maybe 5 years ago, we couldn't have been having this conversation about green technologies and non-destructive remediation, but now we can. And we just, like Terry's saying, we need to implement the great ideas and great solutions that we have.
It would be interesting. I'm just thinking like just a wild brain fart that just happened. If this idea that you've got, Christine, that you're collecting this data, it would be almost kind of cool because right before this interview, we had Cyril Lutterdot from he was basically talking about AI and oceans, and we were thinking like, what are all the different types of things that we can actually learn and better understand about the ocean? But like I'm thinking about that conversation in context with this, and I'm thinking, how cool would it be is if I go dive down and I find this, this munition. I'm like, hey guys, there's a munition here. It's confirmed by other people that see it as well. It'd be cool to see if somehow there was a financial number that said, hey, this is what needs to happen for this thing to get out of here. I don't know if something like that exists. I mean, are we allowed to go to like a GoFundMe or something to help raise money to remove these? Is there any legal stipulations there?
I can't answer for the GoFundMe, but we have a United Nations ocean commitment under Sustainable Development Goal 14, Life Below Water, to set up an innovative science and technology center to eradicate the munitions on a global scale. And what we're to do there is to work with other people in other regions to set up regional underwater action centers to start funding people to be able to go into the water to do this. We're experts. We're doing this for the right reason. Nobody can stop us from doing it. We just don't have any funding to do it. We have this great commitment with the United Nations. It was supported by the Security Council. They approved it. The UN, the United Nations, will send people to the center to train for underwater munitions. The donors will fund it, but we have to build it first, and we have no funds to build it.
Gotcha. Well, so maybe you could tell us the is there a website that people can go to?
There's a website, underwatermunitions.org. We do have a button on that for donations and stuff like that, and you can learn more about underwater munitions. And it will also take you to the site of the United Nations Ocean Registry, so you can actually read what the commitments is about. And there's also a link on there from the Special Ambassador Peter Thompson of the United Nations for Oceans, talking about how important it is to set up this science center to support life below water.
Yeah, I'd like to comment that, the Europeans are doing a much better job at this. I mean, they had World Wars I and II in their backyard, and they're cleaning up. We should too.
Excellent point. I never even thought about that before. Excellent point. Well, we're just about out of time, guys. I promised you guys I would keep you for only 30 minutes. And I really appreciate all of you being here. I wasn't actually sure. I said there was 2 people I know that I could do, and then by just pure miracle, Christine pops in and it's working perfectly. So I'm so stoked. I am so stoked that you came here and you participated, because I think what you're doing is so powerful. It's super important. And I often think about where we are as a human family. I mean, a lot of times, when you listen to Sylvia talk, or if she meets you in person, this is one of the things that she'll talk about. She's like, where would you like to be as a human being at any point in history? Do you want to be here the first time we circumnavigated the planet? Do you want to be here when we went to the moon? Or would you like to be here now when we have massive connectivity between each other like we've never had before? We have technology we've only dreamed of possessing until now, and we know what our problems are, and we just lack the connectivity to make it all happen. And she said, this is the most exciting time to be alive. That's my final comment. I'm taking that directly from Dr. Sylvia Earle, because I love her so much. I would like to just go one by one. Jim, I'd like to start with you. Could you give us a final thought of some things to think about as we close?
Yeah, pick up the bomb, get rid of the problem.
Love it. So simple and to the point. Christine?
I would say unite with your observations and with your community to figure out what's there, and then work with experts to figure out what the solutions could be. Absolutely. Like Terence, for example.
Yeah. Terence?
I would say for those of you who live in the United States, contact your congressman and ask for a congressional hearing, and invite the International Dialogue on Underwater Munitions and our Science Board, so we can show you what's happening in your waters in the United States.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for being here. It's such a huge honor always to talk to you guys. I feel very privileged, because we have a standing call where we're talking about this stuff every week. I've learned so much from you guys, and you all. See, I keep doing it, but I know I'm going to continue to learn more. So that's it for today. I'm going to show you guys a couple trailers. If you look out in this virtual world that you're now watching us, and behind this stage, there are actually some virtual 360 domes. And we're going to be showing a VR version of Ghost Fleet. And Ghost Fleet is the powerful film. I actually met Fatima, who you'll see actually in this film. She's actually saved over 5,000 individuals from the slave trade. And then also we're going to see Sharkwater VR as well as one of the films. But so I'm going to close up now, and then we'll be back in 30 minutes or so, and then I'll have Dr. Erica Woolsey. She's a National Geographic explorer, along with Tiffany Karen from EarthX. And so you guys I'm going to put on some really cool music after the trailers. You guys are welcome to virtually dance, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
เราถูกบังคับให้ทำงานเกือบแทบจะไม่ได้เห็นแผ่นดินเลยถูกตีหางกระเบียนตีถูกบริษัทตามล่าทั้งวันทั้งคืนวันนั้นมีผู้หญิงมาแกก็ถามผมอีกว่าแล้วอยากกลับบ้านไหม
ကျွန်တော်ပတိမာဘယ်လိုမြင်လဲဆိုရင်တော့လူတွေသက်သာရှိပါတော့
ก็คือฉันจะอยู่คือเรื่องมันเกิด30-40 ปีแล้วเนาะคนตายเยอะ
5 ปีได้น้ำเชียงจ้ะ12 ปีเลยครับ
แล้วปุ้ยไม่รู้ไหมว่ามาไปอินโดทำอะไร
ช่วยคนโอเคแล้วเดี๋ยวกลับมา
How many hours to Gaiman?
This really depends of the wind and current.
ลูกเรือคนแรกเนี่ยเขาก็จะบอกว่าเพื่อนเขาอยู่ไหนได้
ช่มันเหรอ ใช่ปะ
ตายพลตัวกูย่าเดลิง
ที่เบซิน่าเนี่ยเขาไม่ชอบเราอยู่แล้วล่ะเพราะว่าเราไปรู้
မြန်မာပွဲစားရယ်လန်တရဲရယ်ပလိတ်ရယ်တူအလုပ်လုပ်တယ်
ส่งคนมาด่าตะคอก
I know people has been killed because of this issue.
เฮ้ยนั่นอีกคนนั่นไงมอเตอร์ไบค์อีกคนนึงอยู่ตรงนั้น
อะไรกันไม่พากันอะไรกัน
Kau tahi semua